Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chiropractic Compass podcast brought to you by the legendary Chiropractor online community. We are officially live, and I could not be more excited and thrilled to be sitting down and discussing deep content tonight and raw, real, authentic content with the and one and only Dr. Nima. How do you say it again, Doc?
Rahmany.
Dr. Nima Rahmany. He is a practicing chiropractor in Vancouver, Canada. He practices part-time and he leads a ton of, he leads a ton of conferences and seminars, and he'll talk more about that at the end to just really dive deep into his training and what he has to offer the chiropractic world and the chiropractic community that he runs in Canada. And so funny story before we get started here is he's showing his Tim Hortons coffee cup, and that is because when I called him, he literally had it in his hand and he was drinking it at the simultaneously of answering the call. And I just had to laugh. I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And I was so like, Canadian. This is so stereotypical of a Canadian.
So Canadian.
It was so amazing. It was so amazing, so authentic, and so real. So I was like, I had to share that with you guys, and I'm so glad he has the cup still and he's still drinking it. But tonight is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this, and I really encourage you guys, anyone watching this, and while Dr. Nima shares his story, I'm going to share this video all over Facebook as much as I can to engage more with the chiropractic world that's out there on the virtual platform. But ask questions, guys. Ask questions. This is our last episode of season 3 of the Chiropractic Compass podcast, which is absolutely amazing. I think we're going on 20 or 21 episodes right now. I don't even recall because we do 5 or 6 a week, and it's been nuts. But it's so much fun, and I'm so honored and humbled to have Dr. Nima sitting in on this interview call with us tonight. And so, Doc, without further ado, before we get into any topics or content or anything like that, talk to us about, introduce yourself to those that might not know you, know your chiropractic story or anything like that. Go ahead and give yourself a brief introduction while I share this.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here and sharing with you. My chiropractic journey began when I was 13, when I had my first chiropractic adjustment, and I knew right then and there I wanted to be a chiropractor. And it was just like, how did he know how to use his hands and just these little adjustments? And I would get up feeling absolutely incredible. The headaches would go away, the hip pain, and just the ability, it just how you felt so aligned and centered. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do, but there was some great resistance from the parents. I don't know if you, when you told your family that you wanted to be a chiropractor, they were jumping for joy and excited, but this wasn't something as, Persian family that they really got, it's like, why don't you go and become a real doctor? You know what I mean? So it was one of those situations where I had to kind of have this feeling of, no, this is really what I want. I have a twin brother who wanted to be a dentist. So it was never anything that they misunderstood there. They were like, yeah, he's going to do great, but we're not sure about this chiropractic thing. And it wasn't until my 6-7 years into practice when they came to my office and they saw like the place running like crazy and people walking out with these big smiles on their faces. And they literally saw a miracle case happen right in front of them. This woman walks in named Gwen who just couldn't walk, a hot, like crazy disc symptoms down her right leg, sciatica, begged me, because it was like my last patient, begged me to stay because I was about to leave and have lunch with my parents. And I basically said, okay, Mom, Dad, have a seat. And I took her into the back room and I examined her and I did her x-rays. And she was one of those patients with a long-standing list of symptoms, like medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, anxiety, depression, all the above, plus the pain medication. She had to literally be carried in from her by her husband. One pain, and she was being carried in and just excruciating pain and never really tried chiropractic. And so at that time, I I just wanted to get her moving. And I did adjustments right away on their first visit, and I did the x-rays and I showed her, did her adjustment, and she literally got up from the table and said, the room seems brighter. And she took a couple steps without any assistance, and she just starts crying, and she's one of those with like a long history of emotional stress, trauma in the past. It was one of those, oh, Dr. Nima, you don't know, I've had it rough, right? One of those situations where you see that with patients they have victims of their history. And so when she got up from her adjustment, she took a couple steps and she's like, oh my God, the room seems brighter. And she's just like, man, it's a miracle. She starts tearing up and she walks up to the front without any assistance, crying, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. She hugs her husband. She was crying. Her husband, who's seen her suffer for like months, he was crying. I'm a bit of a wuss, so I'm crying as well. And as I walk up, they literally see, like, my parents are in the front room, and they literally see this woman who had to be carried in walk out 30 minutes later on her own accord, and they were crying as well. And it was one of those really powerful moments in my practice that was like kind of defining. It was kind of like, this is what was my vision. Even though there was resistance on the outside, I still went for it. It was all out of love and misunderstanding. But now it's like, I finally got that. There was this connection made. They were like, okay, Nima, we get it. And it was a beautiful thing. But what ended up happening was, over the next few weeks, I started working with Gwen, getting her off of all her health, helping her get off of all of her pain medication. But at the time, I was only just doing chiropractic care and doing my half hour to health talks on Tuesday night. And a few months in, Gwen was doing amazing. She was not on any pain medications. She was like dancing in there, and light was coming back in her eyes. And she no-shows for an appointment, and we call her, and her husband answers and says, unfortunately, Gwen died of a heart attack this morning.
Wow.
And it was at that moment I decided that I wanted to become a real doctor, which is a teacher. Doctor means teacher, obviously, as you know. And I just decided at that moment that I was going to start offering in my workshops life skills for a stressful world, like 3-hour workshops on Saturday morning. And so the reason why was I wanted these patients that were getting their chiropractic care to be enrolled in a greater possibility for their health by turning inside and getting tools for transforming their stresses, transforming their past. Based on all the work I've done with John DeMartini and Byron Katie and all of my own personal development work, I kind of assembled it and put it all together. And that was 10 years ago when I started doing that. Today, those 3-hour workshops on Saturday mornings, I've retired from full-time practice. I work part-time, but now I do those workshops, in all these locations around the world, and I call it the overview experience to teach people what I call the overview method, which is a series of self-inquiry and self-regulation questions, along with embodiment tools to help you self-regulate, emotionally regulate, heal your relationships, align with your purpose, and level up in your intimacy. And
That's
so
awesome.
I discovered that that's really what people need. You keep going upstream. You have the back pain, neck pain, the physical manifestations of stress, but as you, with the symptoms, but as you keep going, you have there's physical manifestations of stress, which when you keep going upstream, Johnny, you see that they are usually breakdowns with relationships, current, romantic, primary caregiver, family. And if you keep going upstream, it's a person who's disconnected from themselves, their soul, their context for this planet, who they are, why they're here. And so it's the going upstream. What I teach reflects my own spiritual evolution of healing. So I basically teach people how to heal their physical wounds by going and healing their emotional wounds first.
Absolutely, which we're going to get all into tonight. So again, if you're just tuning in, right now we are live with Dr. Nima, and we are diving deep into just his introduction story, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, like, to see a miracle story, right? Just like that, for your parents to see that, for you to experience it, that's life-changing forever. And then the end of that story, right? And just really understanding like anything can happen at any time, and we're not guaranteed anything in this life. And you really can't take anything for like granted, right? And it's like you really have to appreciate things. And I really like that you brought that story up. You shared that story with us. And so to real quick, I'll bullet list the topics, and then we'll go up to number 1 and we'll dive deep into it. And if we go on side notes, it's totally fine. I just like to give a layout of what people can expect for this episode. So number 1 is first and foremost, head to thelegendarychiropractor.com to check out all of your chiropractic needs if you're a chiropractic student specifically, and get everything that you need for your chiropractic education there, or to supplement rather your chiropractic education. And then so the first topic we're going to talk about tonight is emotional wounds becoming physical, and that's what Dr. Nima kind of ended his story with, and what he teaches every single weekend and every day in his part-time practice and in real life. And then the second topic is some people just don't heal. We're going to dive deep into why that might be and what we can maybe do about that. Relationships impacting your health. And last but not least, the role of intimacy in a successful chiropractic practice. And so I'm really excited to dive deep with Dr. Nima here and everything that he has to offer. So Doc, let's take it to number 1, and that is emotional wounds becoming physical. What does that mean to you, and what do you see that exactly with? Like, share some examples with us.
Well, there's a patient that comes to see me. It was interesting. I was doing a talk this January for a group of local entrepreneurs in Vancouver, and this woman comes up to me after the talk, and she goes, "Do you remember me?" And I go, "No." She says, "I was a patient of yours 8 years ago." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." She goes, "I only came and saw you 3 times." And I was like, okay. And my mind is going, shit, what did I do? What must not have been a good experience, because she looked pretty stern and serious. And she basically said, I came in with excruciating pain in my neck. And every session that you would see me, you were tuning into me, and you said, there's something deeper going on. What are you dealing with right now in your life that's bringing this on? And she said, it pissed me off so much. I felt like you were trying to get in my head, and I wanted nothing to do with you, and I left. I said, this guy's a quack, and he's trying to get in my head, and I just want you to fix my neck. Thank you very much. Leave me the F alone. I didn't see her again. She comes up to me after my talk and says, I now understand everything that you said, and I'm ready. It turns out that she was going through a divorce at the time. She was under a great deal of emotional stress. And, after you've been a body worker, a chiropractor, massage therapist, whatever, where you have your hands on someone in the helping profession, you start to get a sense. You start to get an intuition, especially if you're tuned in and you trust your intuition, which I have been learning more to do as I go. And she basically said, I could see that something was going on. She was going through a divorce, and she said, I'm not going to deal with this. She comes and sees me just this January and says, I'm still the same. I'm dealing with the same physical problems. My neck is still killing me. I have anxiety, depression. I'm on pills for pills for anxiety, and I have diverticulitis. I have irritable bowel diverticulitis, and I think I'm ready to face my shit. It turns out, and she joined kind of my program, and she came to the Overview Experience workshop. That's where she began. And we discovered that these stresses that she's currently going through, these breakdowns in her relationship, dealing with guilt and shame about past unresolved stuff in her marriage, these emotional wounds that come from rejection, abandonment, guilt is a big one. So if you take one of those things and you pile it on one after another based on the events of your life, it's kind of like you're playing hockey. I'm Canadian, so I'll use the hockey analogy. And I twist my ankle, and it's still there. There's a wound there. And then I get back up. I let it kind of settle, but I don't do any chiropractic work or mobilization or any nutrition or any rehab. I just kind of let it settle. So this physical wound is there. And then I get back up and I keep skating, and then I pop a knee out, and I treat it the very same way, with just resting it and just not dealing with it, but not actually addressing it, not doing mobilization work, not doing muscular rehab. I just let it be. The same thing happens in our lives with divorce, with losing a loved one, with getting fired from a job, getting dumped, getting cheated on. In a chiropractic office, one of the things I see a lot, chiropractors who are in practice together or associateship nightmare situations. I certainly had one, where there's like, non-compete clause that is breached, business failures, divorce, like you name it. These all bring up emotional wounds. And if they are not healed properly, similarly to a car accident, not receiving chiropractic care to restore mobility and flexibility and decrease of swelling and muscular spasm, if we don't take the necessary precaution to heal those emotional wounds as well, what happens is they fester and they develop and they become hypersensitive, and those become our triggers. Those emotional woundings become our triggers. So what will happen is I'll be a chiropractor in an office, and a patient will say, no, I don't want to come see you anymore, doc. I'd love to come and see you, but my doctor said I shouldn't go to a chiropractor, so I'm going to withdraw from care. The patient withdraws from care, and the chiropractor who's experiencing that in their practice or staffing issues, these old unresolved emotional wounds come up again, and you get triggered by them again and again and again. It's kind of like you popped your knee out years ago, and you always are bumping into it wherever you go. It's kind of like you're a magnet for that thing, because the universe is trying to get you to heal that thing. It's trying to get you to face it again. There's something you're not looking at. There's something that's not resolved. There's something that's not healed. There's something that's not loved. And so if we don't heal from that, if we don't resolve that, we keep bumping into it again and again and again, bringing up all of these stress hormones that eventually, if unresolved, those emotional wounds, eventually become physical. And then you start to get thyroid issues, digestive issues, reproductive issues, chronic pains, all of those emotional subluxations that lead to chronic health problems. So aside from the necessary chiropractic care to help regulate that nervous system and remove interference, it is imperative for us to make sense of the past. It is imperative for us to take all of those emotional wounds and to create a coherent narrative. What I mean by a coherent narrative is a story that doesn't put you in the place of a victim. That's what emotional wounds are. You, Johnny, hurt me. You broke up with me. You betrayed me. You left me. You whatever. And I'm wounded. And I'm a victim. And I'm just going to hold on to this narrative, this story that's not coherent to your empowerment. You're actually giving your power away. And as long as you allow that to keep going, it eventually starts to break down the cells of your body and create illness. And so patients would come in to see me, and some of them would get better. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, the chiropractic care is working. And others, nothing that you do will help them. Those were the ones that I would see, and I would get frustrated, and my senses told me that they're emotional wounds that are spilling over, and nothing I do here on the table is going to resolve that. And I started giving myself permission to do the adjustment above Atlas and teach people how to become self-healers. And now I lead a global tribe of self-healers all over the world. Yeah,
that is fantastic. I absolutely love that. And it's so true, because the way you explained it, of emotions, having a toll physiologically on ourselves, right? And we all know this, right? Like but we know it at a superficial level. We don't know it at an intimate, deep level, like you're describing it. But it's the exposure to people like you and to doctors that are providing this type of care that will change the trajectory of somebody's life, for the better.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the thing, Johnny. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Johnny, the thing is that everybody knows this to be true.
Mm-hmm.
You'll go to the doctor and go, it's a stress thing. But the thing is, we'll give it lip service. Oh, I know my ulcers. This is stress. We know this, right? We know this here, but we give it lip service.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to create a path, a methodology, a step-by-step in healing that.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not just lip service, but actually the inner work necessary to go inside and uncover those blocks, usually old stories and trauma in the body. So a cognitive narrative that isn't empowering, plus a trauma that's stored in the body, some sort of an alarm. And the way that you heal it is to integrate, is to create a coherent narrative and to move the stress physiology out of the body, to regulate that nervous system. And chiropractic care is a critical component of that journey. It's just not that only piece. Right. And I wanted to give myself permission to use chiropractic principles and to do it, as they pertain to healing, and chiropractic being a part of the big picture, which I love.
Yeah,
so absolutely. Now it's what I integrate.
Awesome. I think that's absolutely fascinating, and it's so necessary. It's absolutely necessary for every patient, like you said, and you kind of we went into that second topic, right, of like some people just don't heal. And when you said, I recognize the non-healers under my care of chiropractic, general chiropractic care, as those were the emotionally wounded or holding on to the emotions that I needed to now address, right? And then we get to the subluxation between the ears, and that's really where some people need you to go. Because some people, you will come in with a sports injury or something like that, and you'll be able to heal it in no time. But other people are looking for a little bit more. They just don't know it, or they might not know it, right? And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I'm going to just jump in right there. And so that patient of mine who jumped in, who kind of said, I'm ready now, we started getting to work on going and taking all of her resentments.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the process and procedure. Number one, teach them how to regulate their nervous system through breath, through focus, through paying attention, through organizing their day with rituals and routines and habits, to meditation, to attunement, to living according to their highest value, to regulate the nervous system themselves, plus chiropractic care. Mm-hmm. Second part is to clear their past resentments. So there's huge resentment towards mom there, this rage towards the way she was raised, the way she was treated. There was some physical abuse and violence that she was still holding on to anger about. There was so clearing the past resentment. Then the third thing we do is to clear the guilt and shame and learn how to dance with the inner critic. So throughout her life, she had made some choices that she's still beating the crap out of herself for. And then, as what happens is when you don't clear all of this, she starts to repeat the same patterns that her mother did with her own son. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I've been so angry about this that I've become what I didn't want in my mother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so once we got all of that together, within 3 months, no more digestive problems. She went off of all of anxiety medications, and she up-leveled her intimacy with her partner because she cleared the guilt and shame. If I'm walking around with guilt and shame about me and a low self-worth, how do you think I show up as a partner in a romantic relationship? Mm-hmm. Pretty shitty.
Right.
Pretty shitty, right? Mm-hmm. So when she lets that go, guess what happens to the level of intimacy? They hadn't been intimate for like 9 months, and then all of a sudden they're able to have real authentic conversations with one another. The body heals, and she was just like, wow. And it took about 8 years, and she was very resistant to it. But what happened was I was getting so frustrated in my chiropractic practice, working with people who just wanted the surface level stuff, that I started getting really angry and depressed, and I thought, okay, it's time to move on. Mm-hmm. And that's when I sold my full-time practice. Now I practice part-time, but it's kind of under the umbrella of, physical and emotional. It's a top-down, which is cognitive, and a bottom-up, approach to healing the nervous system through cognitive work and through body-based work, including chiropractic, to release the trauma so that we can clear the past and then show up present in our lives, and then connecting deeper to purpose, fulfillment, career, abundance, prosperity, worthiness, intimacy, truthfulness, I don't know, like vulnerability. All of the things that we want are blocked because of trauma.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the full-time thing. So patients will come in now with physical symptoms, but I don't see too many. I don't have like a high volume practice anymore. I sit down, I talk to them. I'm like, what's going on? I'm going through divorce. Oh, okay. Well, there's a workshop there. We can clear some of our shit.
Yeah.
That's in alignment with this. So now I just love, I'm a teacher. I just love teaching.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. And I wrote a note here. So for those jumping on, it was regulate the nervous system, clear past resentments, and clear guilt and shame, and learn to dance with the inner critic. And I love all of those. And I think those are three major takeaways to really starting to heal the brain. And I wrote a side note to that and wrote that the brain runs it all. And everybody has to realize that. And I know my chiropractic students out there know that, and my chiropractors know that. But for anyone else listening out there, like the brain runs emotions, tissues, organ systems, hormones, all physiology and structure. And it's like, if we know that, right, if we can clear this of past traumas, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, it'll be amazing on what the body will respond with, right? Like you said, her bowel, her bowels cleared up, and physiological things were taking place, and healing was taking place because you dealt with an emotion, a limbic system issue, right? And that, to me, is so important for people to understand and really take away from this. So, Doc, talk to us about how... Go ahead.
There's so many different angles to approach that, too,
yeah.
Right? So this is about integration. We have a higher mind, our cognitive sense. We have the lower mind. We have the limbic system, the amygdala, all of that. And so if you want to heal from trauma, we must address all of it. The cognitive, creating a coherent narrative, the body-based, regulating all of that trauma, because and how do you gain access? You use your triggers. And this is the thing, the triggers give you information. Whatever triggers you, whatever sets you off, is the window for us to dive in and look and explore. The trigger becomes the access point. So if you get triggered every time I walk away from you in the middle of the sentence, then that becomes the access point. Then Johnny can go, all right, so where did I experience this level of violation? Okay, Dad walked out. All right, so this is something for us to look into and heal from. Because that story about Dad and that body-based kind of trauma that you're holding on to, the separation from losing Dad, is messing up your current career. It's showing up in your worthiness in doing a report of findings. It's showing up in your feeling of power and self-expression to stand up and do a health talk.
Yeah.
And so without getting all of those lined up and adjusting those subluxations above atlas from your past, you are crippling your power to produce, to serve, to be connected to yourself in your future career. So this what I discovered is, as I went in and healed those parts, the expansion of the community that I served kept growing from just a tiny little, associate in a practice to the entire practice of a, 11-person practitioner multidisciplinary clinic to a global lecturer.
Yeah.
With a global group of self-healers that I lead.
Yeah.
And with a team all over the world. And so it happens when you go inside.
Yep.
Innerbound.
I like that you said that. It does happen. And we last night, so on yesterday's episode, I was with Dr. Chris Zano, and we talked all about self-awareness and understanding and reflecting on who we are and becoming really clear on what we want. And that's kind of what we talked about there. But I like how you said, we have to know ourselves and look inward. in order to kind of heal. And I like that you said, I kind of wrote this as a line, and I wrote, we become our triggers, and because they keep coming up, but we don't have to be, because we have to understand that that is a victim mentality, and that victim mentality leads to further stress and those triggers constantly coming up more and more and more, because the universe, like you said earlier in the show, the universe wants to tell us something, and it's like, you need to heal here, right? Like, this is the time, this is where it needs to happen, and this is how it needs to happen. You just need to be conscious enough and aware enough here to recognize that and be able to accept it and say, okay, like that lady was for you. My time has come, right? Like, I'm accepting.
Totally.
I'm accepting that this is it, right? Like, this is my time to heal myself and to rid all of these emotional stresses that might be taking place and having a negative impact on my life.
And one of the things here is that what Dr. Zano said, Chris is a great guy. He, we got to know ourselves. And the thing is, you got to know yourself. You got to love yourself. I remember sitting down and asking myself that, how the hell do you do that?
Right.
And what I realized was that it is impossible to know yourself if you're disconnected and dissociated from yourself because of trauma.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to connecting with your body, for example, and knowing how to drop into your body, you do not know who you are. You can't tune in to what your feelings are because you've been trying to stuff away your emotions, and you don't know how to process your emotions. Most of us haven't learned. Most of us dissociate from ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we go, I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. So it's through the process of nervous system regulation, through breath work. This is why we do breath work in all of my trainings, is it is access to stimulating my parasympathetic nervous system to shut off the stress response. It's like a conscious thing that I can do, which I realized before I learned this, was I was spending the majority of my day not even breathing. I was so anxious.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to literally go back to learning how to breathe. And it just, the conscious awareness of doing that brought me back into the moment, connected me deeper with myself. So when I asked myself, what is it that I would love to do with my life? I could answer because I was connected to myself. So it takes a deconditioning for you to learn how to know yourself. It's not a quick fix. So
right.
Kind of, that's what my Powerfully Aligned program is really all about, to really returning to you and knowing who you are. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So, Doc, I want to jump into this next topic, and we talked a little bit about it, but if you have any further things to say about relationships, because we talked about how emotions impact our health, but talk to us a little bit about relationships impacting our health and what that looks like as a manifestation.
Yeah, well, it's really the most fascinating thing is we're hardwired socially, and we spend our lives. I spent my life thinking everything's perfect until I got into a relationship, and they bring out mirrors towards you and they trigger you. And what happens is relationships, when you put on an expectation that this person is supposed to make me happy or work with me or whatever, when things don't go well, and how we respond to conflict is a very good indicator of how my health is going to be. How I respond to conflict is a very good indicator of how my health is going to be. Do I let it sink in, and do I take it on and allow it to derail me? Or am I able to self-regulate and self-resource when there's a conflict and not bring myself down and start beating myself up as a result? And so we don't receive training in how to navigate relating to one another. So we go based on what we learned from our parents, and we're disconnected from ourselves mostly. And then we get into these relationships with business, partnerships, romantic, and the breakdowns and conflict within them, they actually leave a stain on our nervous system. So what I discovered was that most health problems were started from stress-related problems. With, when you look, they were relational breakdowns, family relations, primary caregiver, and romantic. So I just, I was looking at my life going, wow, there seems to be one common denominator in all my broken relationships, and that's me. And so it's like when you run a business, you can take the shitty things that you suck at and you can delegate that to somebody else. But in a relationship, you can't delegate your, weaknesses.
Right.
You must work on strengthening them.
Mm.
So I became very self-aware that I sucked at relationships because I was really bad with the relationship with myself. It's really aligned. It's like it's 100% like correlated with how you're relating to yourself. So I changed the step in that dance. I started to become more connected with myself. I shifted the relationship with myself. And now there's a complete shift in all of my relationships. And something called intimacy emerges. And intimacy is the being seen, being heard, being known by another, and knowing someone else, and giving them the freedom and the space to be known and seen through you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I like the you can't delegate your personal. I wrote you can't delegate your personal or emotional weaknesses, and especially when you're applying it to relationships. And that is so true. I like how you compared it to business, right? Like if we're bad at marketing, we just hire somebody to market, right? Like we can't. But if we're bad at, what you're saying is
empathy.
Like, yeah, sure, yes, empathy, companionship, something along those lines. Like you can't just be like, oh yeah, I pay Bob for that, right? Like he's my empathy guy.
Yeah, if you were bad at sex, you could always delegate that to somebody else to have sex with your partner, but I'm not sure that's something you really want to do. So if you suck at empathy, you can't delegate that stuff. And I sucked at empathy. And so it's now become my superpower because I experienced enough pain in my personal life through that to actually make that a priority to learn as a skill.
Right.
And that is probably the greatest gift that you can give yourself as a chiropractor and as a leader is understanding how to inspire and motivate your team, how to emotionally regulate your moods, how to connect to a cause or a purpose that's greater than you, and how to become resilient to external feedback and criticism. Not so deeply needy of approval and not so bloody fearful of criticism, which is how I was living.
Right. Yeah, and that actually ties into our next and last topic here. But I want to touch on something you said previously, and that I wrote it down and started. It said, how you respond to conflict is a direct reflection of what your health is and will be. And I firmly agree with you on that because it's like how you see conflict, do you face it head on? Do you avoid it? Are you a more passive aggressive person?
Do you take it on?
Yeah.
Do you take it on and let it stew and create like ulcers within you? Do you start beating yourself up? That all has to do with your relationship with your past.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that. So first of all, introduce us to the guest we have on the screen here. Who's this?
This is Lucy. She's
awesome.
My 12-year-old Maltese poodle, and she actually comes to each adjustment in all of my patient visits. She's my assistant, and so she's just she's a healing energy. And
awesome.
So I want to be just like her when I grow up.
I love it, Doc. So talk to us about, as we were kind of transitioning here, talk to us a little bit about the intimacy in a successful chiropractic practice and what that looks like. You kind of listed 4 things like motivating and inspiring your team, regulating moods, connecting purpose greater than you, and accepting criticism and being able to deal with criticism in the right ways. But talk to us a little bit more about how intimacy plays a role in a successful practice.
Beautiful. You'll notice that the most successful practices are the chiropractors who've really connected deeply with their pain. They've processed it and are able to convey it and communicate it in a very inspiring way that touches, moves, and inspires the audience. So I had a client who's a chiropractor who's been practiced for 11 years and working under one of those practice management companies that kept kind of hammering in all of the scripting and all of that stuff. And this guy just felt so disconnected. He's like, I'm 11 years in practice. I'm not making it. I want to quit. It's no longer fun. I need your help. So he was basically using the report of findings and scripting that another practice management company gave him. So I said, all right, so let's find out who you really are. Like, what is it that you love to do? That's the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning, and that you don't need anybody pushing you. And so we discovered his values, and he absolutely loved orchids, healing and reviving orchids. So what he would say, and he was telling me this story, he would just light up when he would say it. He says, most people, when they get an orchid, they have these beautiful flowers, and then the flowers die, right? And then they throw the orchid away, but not me. I know exactly the conditions to revive an orchid and to heal an orchid and make it bloom stronger than ever, even after the leaves have died. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And he would talk about it and he would light up, which told me that this is a very high value for him, is very relevant for him and near and dear to his heart. And then I asked him, I said, do you have any orchids in your office? And he's like, no. He goes, they're all in my solarium. It's funny, even before I go to the bathroom, when I wake up in the morning, before I go to the bathroom, I go and check on these orchids. I love these things. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I asked him this one question. This is what I asked him. I said, and this is why it really helps to have a mentor and a coach, to kind of help you pull from you the greater versions of you. And he basically said, I asked him, I said, so tell me, what does it take? What are the essentials that it takes to heal an orchid from the dead, to raise an orchid from the dead? And he starts going into all of the steps, not just water, but then this much sunlight, and then it's got to be on this schedule, and then this much nutrients, and he's going into it. I'm like, oh, great. And I asked him another question, and I said, how is healing an orchid, what are the similarities between healing an orchid and healing someone's spine and nervous system and health? And he was just like, oh, it's like a light bulb went off. And so as he drew the parallels, I said, that's going to be your report of findings and your health talk.
Yep.
So he threw the whole script away, and he started bringing his orchids into his practice. And before, he would throw an X-ray up, and he would talk for half an hour, and da-da-da-da-da. Now he walks in, he threw the script away, he puts down an orchid, a healthy one, a not one, and he asks the question, goes, what's the difference between these two? And he would start in a very real, authentic, intimate conversation about this, and he would then put up the X-rays of the patient and a normal set of X-rays and say, and draw parallels, and the light bulbs would go off, and the patients would be like, oh my God, I get it. And then during his health talks, he would have orchids, and he would put on his gloves and show the process and procedure of healing an orchid, and then draw parallels to the spine and the nervous system and how what he did it. And that story and that picture and the imagery, people just got it. And he started getting requested to do his orchid health talk to all sorts of places, to the MS Society, to the Diabetes Society. His patients were like, we need you to come and do your orchid talk for us. And after 3 months, he calls me on New Year's Eve, and he's crying, and he's like, Doc, I just wanted to tell you, I love my practice again. And it's all because he gave himself permission to go intimate within himself, and then to be known, to know himself, to give himself permission to know and to see himself, what his passions were, and to integrate them into his chiropractic practice, and then communicate it in a way that others can know his passion as well. So intimacy is to be known. And a chiropractor's practice will expand to the degree that he or she, the chiropractor, can be intimate with themselves, taking off the mask, not trying to be professional, but real.
Yeah.
I mean, I started doing rap songs during my health talk. You know, like, I can't imagine you doing it because that's not intimate to you.
Right.
But that was my thing. And I would do these rap songs for my patients. Half of them would be like, this guy's a goof. And the other half would be like, I love this guy. They would go tell their friends. And I would do these videos. And it was just a matter of me being intimate with me by knowing who I am
Right.
and being fully self-expressed within the chiropractic model. And I believe that that's going to be the distinguishing key feature, unique selling proposition for you when you get out there, if you give yourself permission to be seen and heard and known.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. And I connecting parallels is what you kept saying, right? Like make connections for people to understand, not only to relate to the importance of a healthy nervous system and whatever you're relating it to, but making the connection of this is what you are about and passionate about, because when they see you light up, it lights off something in them as well that's like, oh my gosh, this guy is a healer, this lady's a healer, this person can help me, right? Can really help me. And I really want to tie this into one last topic quick that is it's a bonus topic.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm back. Yeah.
Okay.
Back.
Okay. I said we have a connecting. Did you hear the connecting parallels part?
Yeah.
Okay. So connecting the parallels for people and really allowing them to connect with your passion. And I have a little bit of a bonus topic for people and for you to answer a little bit on and maybe agree or disagree with it. But the PCPs nowadays, or general practitioners, or whatever you want to call it, there is a disconnect there. And the reason being is because of everything we talked about before, right? Like everything we talked about on this episode for the last 46 minutes is the reason there's a disconnect. And there's a disconnect between the patients, there's a disconnect between society, and you're in Canada, I'm in America. It's different, but it's not, right? Like it's different, but it's not. And it's I want to talk and ask your opinion on, like, people are wanting this, are they not? A more authentic, a more real, a more honest and trustworthy doctor, right? And someone to actually go to who cares for them, who cares about them, and can not only tie that doctor's passions into their care, but their truest and most real and raw feelings into the care, right? And that's what you're talking about when it comes to intimacy. Would you agree or disagree with that comment?
Well, absolutely, I agree. And the thing is that if you lay on my table and I'm in my head and I'm not in my body, grounded to the cells of my body while I'm connected to my purpose, you're going to be able to tell from the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to me to make sure that I take the garden of my mind and my energy field and I raise my vibration and I raise my energy to the context of, in my field, you heal. So I live in the domain of, when you enter my office, my energy field, on my table, I have taken enough time to work on my intentions, my connection with myself, my physical body, so that I have no doubt in my mind that when you lay on my table, I am a clear channel.
Yeah.
Through which universal love can flow to others.
Yeah.
This hollow reed. So I visualize myself as this clear channel who's deeply connected to myself, certain, present, loving, and grateful. And in that moment, when I pay attention, because I'm not perfect with it, I'm the first to admit, I don't do this all the time. And when I don't, my practice and my work isn't fulfilling at all. But when I do take the time to do that, this becomes probably one of the most highest forms of service that I can achieve, that I can reach, and it's the most rewarding and fulfilling.
Yeah.
Both from a give and a receive standpoint.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's up to me. It's up to me to regulate that. It's up to me to create that. It takes work to get through, and there has to be some making sense of my past in order to remove those old stories of my unworthiness that stops me from being able to connect to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So really knowing yourself, and we talked all about it. If you missed it, go back and rewatch this episode, because we talked all about knowing yourself, and really how to do that. And I want to close on listing actually it's going to be 7 things that I took away from the episode, and that was the ways you go about healing, and obviously, like, healing emotions and spiritual emotional manifestations of trauma. And that was regulate the nervous system, clear the past resentment, and clear the guilt and shame in order to better dance with the inner critic. And then the other 4 things were the things that apply to a chiropractic office specifically. So for all my chiropractors and chiropractic students out there, you have to know how to inspire and motivate your team. You have to regulate. You have to know how to regulate your moods. You have to connect with a greater purpose than yourself, and you have to be good at dealing with criticism. And you mentioned one thing very subtly and quickly, and you said that's why it's good to have a mentor and a coach, because it draws out the best in you that you might not see, and allowing that for what you did for that person and that doctor and that practice, you were able to pull out, okay, here's what you love. Now take that and apply that to your practice. And then you'll see that you love your practice again. Your patients love you. Your patients love your practice, and everything just kind of erupted from there. And so really recognizing and being able to stay tuned with who you are and clearing your past emotions, spiritual, physical traumas is so, so critical. So Doc, in closing, please share with us, number 1, thank you for being on the show. And number 2 is share with us where people can further, reach out to you or get more content from you. And I'll drop the links on the bottom of the screen as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, and I have a weekly show called Trigger Proof. And I teach people, there's really 4 fundamental principles: healing relationships, emotional regulation, aligning with purpose, and leveling up your intimacy, which is vulnerability, authenticity, which takes work. And there's a tribe of global self-healers that I run. And my show is called Trigger Proof, and it's on YouTube. You can check out my YouTube channel. Awesome. It's nicely, it's edited on YouTube, but it's a live show every Wednesday at noon on my Facebook, noon Pacific time. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern on my Facebook page. So it's my Facebook business page, Nima Rahmany. And so, yeah, it's a live trigger-proof show. It's anything from self-love to the whole narcissist versus empath kind of debate, to how to find your why, signs you have an intimacy disorder. It's really about intimacy. This is really what we want. At the end of the day, most chiropractors are like, oh, I'll be happy when I have, $1 million practice, BMW, penthouse, trophy wife, all of these kind of tick boxes. You get there and you realize something's missing. And so what I realize is what we want is intimacy and connection within our careers, within our practices, within our relationships, and then within ourselves. So when you make that your priority, everything else seems to fall into place. The abundance comes, the gratitude is there, the healing body happens, and then your relationships start to transform to reflect the changes from within.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then I also dropped drnima.com/chat on the bottom of the screen and drnima.com/watch. And then also I added Trigger Point live on Facebook. And say those days again.
Trigger Proof. Wednesdays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. Yeah. And so the links there, I have a 5 shifts training, the 5 critical shifts that you need to make to get through transitional anxiety, relationship anxiety. That's drnima.com/watch. And if anybody really is resonating with this and you could qualify for a strategy session with me, there's a little application form when you go drnima.com/chat. Tell me exactly what's stopping you, and then we could possibly hop on a call if this is something that you're actually ready to transform, your practice or even your personal life. Because you don't really have practice issues. It's personal problems disguised as business problems. So just by getting aligned with those, all of a sudden the practice transforms.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome, Doc. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for everyone watching the show. That was drnima.com/chat and drnima.com/watch and Trigger Proof live on Facebook. I had it right on the screen. I said it wrong, though. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Nima and Lucy, for being on the show. I greatly, greatly appreciate both of you, and I hope that everyone has a great evening. And we are signing off season 3 of the Chiropractic Compass podcast. Woo! And that's big. That's huge. So
congrats, bro.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you, man. I want to acknowledge you for having the balls to step up and to reach out and to expand. And every episode is not comfortable. It must not be comfortable, but look at what you've become in the 20 episodes.
Right.
Look at what you've had to learn, the contacts that you've made, the friendships that you made. Everywhere you go on this planet, you're going to bump. Like if I bump into you, I'm going to give you this big hug and go, hey, dude, what's up? Yeah. Keep going, bro. So
awesome.
You're doing the difficult things. You're doing it right. If you just keep this up, I promise you, in 20 years, we're going to have a conversation. I'll be like, look how far you've gone.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for those kind words. Thank you for the encouragement. And I will keep it up. Season 4 is coming early to mid, probably more mid-fall. I don't have the exact dates down right now because
Let me know if you need a sexy guest. We'll be right back on that.
Absolutely, Doc. Absolutely will. And I those dates will be coming soon. I just have to figure out my next quarter schedule and all the times with doing my preceptorship and everything like that. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, Dr. Nima, for being on the show. And have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And go get yourself some Tim Hortons coffee to end the night. Bye, guys.